Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be discussing Ozzy Osbourne's discography, and I will be ranking his albums based upon my own personal taste. The albums that I go to the most from Ozzy compared to the albums that I listen to the least. Again, it's not a universal ranking, it is a personal ranking. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with Ozzy Osbourne. We're going to start with my least favorite Ozzy album, and that is the last Ozzy album that was released. It's probably Ozzy's final album. Maybe, maybe not. He's done this before. I'm going to retire and then comes back, whatever. Doesn't do much for me, honestly. Ordinary Man. It sounds like a mix of everything. It almost feels like it is a caricature of Ozzy in some ways. It's just not as good as the prior albums. The title track's pretty good. It's almost like Ozzy and friends. You got a bunch of people together to come in and help him do an album. It's not a real band or anything like that. It's okay. It's just not as good as these albums that were made prior to it, ultimately. So, next is going to be Undercover. This is Ozzy doing cover songs. He does a good job on the songs, for the most part. It's just not something that I really go back and listen to, except, the excitement didn't last past the initial stage. In other words, it lasted for, a couple listens, and it's like, oh, okay, I've heard these songs. I'd rather hear the original artist sing it, but Ozzy did, a pretty good job of covering them. There was one song that I really wanted to hear Ozzy sing for many years that he did on this album, and that's 21st Century Schizoid Man. But again, I prefer the King Crimson version, obviously. But again, yeah, Undercover is gonna not really bottom out the ranking, but come pretty close. Next is Scream. This sounds like Down to Earth and Black Rain had a baby. This one brings me back a little bit sometimes because it brings back some of the 80s Ozzy stuff to me. But it also has a modern kick to it. A lot of the songs are good. Again, it's not a bad album. It's just not as good as the stuff that I'm going to be talking about here in a few minutes. But nothing really stands out on this album to me. It's just stock rock. But, it is what it is. Scream. Next is the 95 album Osmosis. This album, great title, but not really a great album. I mean, it's good. It has some good songs, I suppose. It just didn't seem like heavy rock to me. It sounded like Ozzy kind of lightened up a little bit. Some of the themes are still darker, but the music is just not as rock to me, as heavy. I enjoy a few tracks. I Just Want You is a powerful one. Ghost Behind My Eyes is pretty good. There's some quality tracks on here, but most of it just falls flat to me. Only like nostalgia would bring me back. I bought the album 95. I'm like, oh yeah, I like this. So, that brings me back from time to time. Next is going to be Down to Earth. Surprisingly good album, actually. A lot of great heavy metal songs on this one. Gets Me Through, I really like that one. Facing Hell, That I Never Had, real hard hitting songs. I liked Dreamer, that was the hit off the album. But it ranks a little higher than Osmosis, and it has its moments from Ozzy. 80s kind of sounding Ozzy for sure. So, Down to Earth. Next is going to be Black Rain. This one's different. It's more modern, more industrial at times, heavy, dark. Ozzy, his voice on this one, it just sounds different. It sounds triumphantly angry or something. Not going away. I don't want to stop. It's almost like he's fighting to remain this, godfather of metal music or something. Yeah, I don't know. It's just different. He don't sound like typical stock Ozzy sound. It's just, he sounds angrier on this one. I really like that. I enjoy this album for that reason. And the music is a little different than much of his stuff as well. It's got some great composition on this one, on Black Rain. I think this one might have been Zach's last album with him, Zach Wild. But yeah, Black Rain. Next is going to be Bark at the Moon, the introduction to the highly underrated Jake E. Lee. Again, Ozzy takes a dark, albeit sometimes comical, direction on this album. It's almost like horror rock, and I think later in his career he became like gothic horror rock. One guy described it as Hot Topic metal, you know, the later Ozzy. But yeah, it's good. There's not really a bad song on Bark at the Moon. It just sounds sort of like stock rock pieces, for the most part. I don't dislike any of the songs, with the exception of So Tired. But ironically, I sing that song a lot. I must be tired a lot. But I don't really like the song. I just sing it a lot. It's just strange. I don't know. But Waiting for Darkness is amazing. Now You See It, Now You Don't. Really enjoy that one. Bark at the Moon's good. But yeah, Bark at the Moon falls in that slot. Next is going to be the 1991 retirement album, No More Tears. Incredibly heavy album here. A ton of MTV hits from this one. It was supposed to be his last tour, but we know how that ended. This one reaches for the stars, basically, and it rides among them. I mean, it's a great album. You had No More Tears. You have Mr. Tinker Train, Hellraiser, Time After Time, Sin, or S-I-N, AVH was a good one. Mama, I'm Coming Home was the big hit. And that song, they drove it into the ground, basically, but, I mean, I still like it. I'll still sing it. You know, it is a good song. There's some crazy moments on this one, like Zombie Stomp, you know, kind of silly Ozzy moments. All in all, it's a solid end to his career, but it didn't end, did it? It continued. So, you know, still a great Ozzy album. No More Tears is a classic. Coming in next is going to be the debut album. I know this one ranks number one on most people's list, or many people's list. But to me, it is a pioneering album of 80s metal. This is Ozzy coming back from the dead, basically, after he got kicked out of Black Sabbath. This album and Diary of Madman are like showcases of the craft and versatility of Randy Rhoads. You know, this showed that Ozzy could break away from Black Sabbath successfully, and he did. And a lot of these songs just set the standard for rock and roll for the next decade or two. You're talking about Crazy Train, everybody knows that. Mr. Crowley, Suicide Solution, those hits like that. My only real issue with this album is the tinny production of it. It sounds like it was recorded in a box sometimes. Randy Rhoads' guitar tone sounds like a toy guitar sometimes. It just sounds boxed in and, you know, tinny at times. I really enjoy Mr. Crowley. Revelation, Mother Earth are probably my favorites off this one. Next is going to be No Rest for the Wicked. What? You're ranking that album over Blizzard? Yeah, I like it. I go back and listen to it more than I do Blizzard. It's a highly underrated album. I mean, it really is. Ozzy tackles some issues here that are current for the time, but stands the test of time. The album's heavy. It's comical at times. It's wild. It's raucous. It has moments of introspection, like Fire in the Sky. I love that song. A lot of people, you know, dismiss that one. I had a friend who just couldn't stand that song by Ozzy, but I love that song, Fire in the Sky. It really it's almost a personal song for me. I mean, I can totally get what's going on in that song. Breaking All the Rules, Bloodbath in Paradise, horror rock there. Miracle Man, of course, kind of taking a swing at the TV evangelist thing in the 80s, when some of those guys come out with those scandals, sexual scandals and things of that nature. Demon Alcohol, heavy song, but very important as far as describing what alcohol can do to people. Those are my choice cuts from No Rest for the Wicked. Okay, moving on to number 2. This was very tough. Very tough. Number 1 and number 2. Actually, I think this album is the best Ozzy album of all time. It's my number 2 album, Diary of a Madman. It's much heavier and darker than Blizzard. This is where Randy Rhoads' guitar tone improves a bit. The songs are incredible displays of songwriting and performance. Over the Mountain, Flying High Again, even though that song's been running the ground. You Can't Kill Rock and Roll, Little Dolls, and the epic Diary of a Madman. I love that song. This album is the shiniest trophy in Ozzy's case to me. It is the best Ozzy album. Why did I not rank it number 1? Because even though I consider it to be the greatest Ozzy album, to me, my favorite Ozzy album, and the Ozzy album that I go to the most, at number 1, The Ultimate Sin. This is not Ozzy's best album, as I said, but it is my favorite album by Ozzy. I love every song off this album. It brings back a lot of memories for me. It's a personal thing. It's Ozzy's Cold War album, too, and I'm a big... I grew up in the Cold War, and it really means a lot. Like to hear these songs, it brings back a lot to me. And just look at the cover. I mean, the nuclear explosion, the demon coming out of it, has a hot chick on it, things of that nature. But it's totally 80s for sure. He has at least 2 songs about the Cold War or nuclear war on this one, which would be Killer of Giants, a masterpiece of a song. And Thank God for the Bomb, which is kind of goofy, but, it is what it is again. The heaviness is brought out in the production on this one. It's not great, but it's great for the time, mid-80s. You got the radio-friendly hit Shot in the Dark, one of my favorite Ozzy songs. You've got Secret Loser, Killer of Giants, as I mentioned earlier, just a great song. Fool Like You, I love the drive of that song, and the title track, Ultimate Sin, just opens it up, just smashes you right in the face. It's just so good. It is, to me, even though Diary's the best album, it's the Ozzy album for me. It's like the album that those 2 albums would be the 2 albums I would give someone if they wanted to get into Ozzy. So, Ultimate Sin. All right, guys, that's it. That's my ranking of Ozzy Osbourne. I'll be back with another video at some point. It'll either be a ranking video or my British wife video or some sort of video. But until then, you guys take care.